This video discusses the calculation of break-even volume and the evaluation of the reasonableness of the break-even volume amounts. Common questions we get from business owners. How many units do I have to sell to cover my costs? How many units do I have to sell to make a profit? And really the third question here is that unit volume reasonable? Break-even volume measures the number of units that must be sold to cover the costs of operating a business. So sales up to the break-even point contribute to covering costs, and then sales beyond the break-even point contribute to profits. First you have to cover your costs. Once you've covered your costs, the additional units sold contribute to your profits. A little bit of a terminology refresher. Recall that in accounting we use terms like cost of goods sold. These are the costs associated directly with the items we sell. In the economic world and in the break-even world, we refer to these as variable costs. In the accounting world, we also have operating expenses, generally the rent, utilities, things like that, the fixed costs of operating the business. In the economic world, we call them fixed costs. So these terms are used relatively interchangeably in the management decision world, and we provide this refresher here because in break-even we specifically refer to them as variable costs and fixed costs. So let's take a quick look at Evelyn's Cupcake Shop. Evelyn sells her cupcakes at $5 each. The cupcakes cost $3 to make. The baker's wages, flour, frosting, etc. that goes into those cupcakes costs a total of $3 per cupcake. She spends $3,000 per month to keep the shop open, to rent, utilities, any loans she has, etc. The question for break-even volume is how many cupcakes must Evelyn sell each month to cover the cost of making the cupcakes and the cost of opening the shop. It's break-even volume. So let's apply our break-even terminology. Cupcakes sell for $5 each. That is, the revenue per unit is $5. Cupcakes cost $3 each to make. That means the variable cost per unit is $3. Costs $3,000 per month to keep the shop open. Fixed costs are $3,000. So let's look at our calculations. We start by calculating something called unit contribution margin. Unit contribution margin is the gross profit from each unit. So it's the profit from each unit associated with the variable costs. We take revenue per unit, we subtract variable cost per unit, and we get unit contribution margin. In this case, we take $5 sale price of cupcakes, subtract the $3 direct cost of producing the cupcake, and we're making $2 per cupcake, which can be applied to covering our fixed costs. So each cupcake is contributing $2 towards those fixed costs. Now, break-even volume is the second part of the calculation. We need a unit contribution margin to do our break-even calculation. And break-even volume measures how many units must be sold each period to cover costs. So our break-even volume is defined as our fixed cost divided by our unit contribution margin. In our example, $3,000 a month to run the shop, that was our fixed cost, $2 unit contribution margin, $2 profit from each cupcake. We need to sell 1,500 cupcakes per month to cover costs. Evelyn starts making a profit on the 1,501st cupcake. Now let's evaluate our break-even volume. Is the break-even volume reasonable? Or, said differently, can Evelyn really sell 1,500 cupcakes a month? Is that a reasonable number for a small cupcake shop? Well, let's look at what goes into evaluating our break-even volume. And it's the same if you're doing a cupcake shop or a massive factory. How many hours is the business open? How many days is the business open? How many hours per day is it open? How many customers per hour per day are served? Does the business have the production capacity to make that many units? And really the final question, is there a large enough flow of customers to support that? So let's take a look at Evelyn's Cupcake Shop. Let's assume for a second that Evelyn is open 25 days per month, 8 hours per day. Now, 8 hours per day is probably typical hours for a shop to be open, particularly if it's run by a small family business. 25 days per month is approximately 6 days per month. There's 4.3 days and 4.3 weeks in a typical month. If you open 6 days, you'd be open 24 24, 25, 26 days per month. So let's assume Evelyn is open 8 hours per day, six days per week, which is approximately 25 days per month. So if we divide our 1,500 cupcakes divided by our 25 days per month, the answer is 60, which means that Evelyn must sell 60 cupcakes per day. So she probably certainly has the capacity to produce 60 cupcakes per day. That's, cupcakes bake in dozens or half dozens in the oven. So it would only be a limited amount of baking. So she certainly has the production capacity to produce 60 cupcakes. So in this case, we've answered that question. If it was 600 cupcakes or something like that, she might not have the production capacity. We take our 60 cupcakes and we divide them by our 8 hours per day. That's 7.5 cupcakes per hour. This business needs to sell 7.5 cupcakes per hour. Now, if you're in a small retail business, one of the questions is, can you actually serve that number of customers? How long does it take a customer to go through the checkout process? You have the flow of customers to support this. So it takes 7.5 cupcakes per hour, is 1 cupcake each 8 minutes. So that certainly sounds like a reasonable volume for this business. There'll certainly be 8-minute periods where there are no customers at all in the store. There may be some busy periods at lunchtime or late in the afternoon, early morning, something like that, where there's a line of customers in the store. But on average, serving a customer every 8 minutes in a small retail store is very, very reasonable. Again, if this said we had to serve a customer every 25 seconds or every 30 seconds or something like that, and an average transaction took 3 or 4 minutes, it probably wouldn't be a reasonable projection for that break-even amount. But because we've got a relatively extended period of time in this example, it makes sense. So what we've done here is we've basically taken the break-even point and we've tried to evaluate it in terms of the production capacity of our business, as well as in terms of, in the case of this shop, a flow of customer perspective. When do we expect customers to come in? When do we expect our downtime? Do we have a reasonable projection that we can meet that break-even volume? And in this case, the answer is yes, we can. It seems like a quite reasonable number for this small shop. So let's take a look at what we talked about in this video. The first step in calculating break-even is to determine your variable and fixed costs. Next step is to calculate your unit contribution margin, calculate your break-even volume. Once you have the break-even volume, and this is a very important step to move beyond simply the calculation, is to evaluate the reasonableness of that break-even volume. Does it make sense in terms of your capacity, in terms of your customer flow, and simply in terms of the hours or days in the month?